Just hearing an item of Westminster gossip that's translated into reality. Douglas Carswell is leaving the Tory party. He's the MP for Clacton, where he was first elected, I think, back in 2005. I could be corrected on that. And he's announcing his defection to UKIP. We listen in.
I've come to appreciate all that feminism has achieved. Both boys and girls are growing up in Britain today having better life chances than before, thanks to that greater equality. There's been a revolution in attitudes towards disabled people. What was once dismissed as political correctness gone mad, we now recognise as just straightforward good manners. Good. So much about Britain is so much better, except when it comes to how we do politics. UKIP is not an angry backlash against the modern world. Modernity has raised our expectations of how things could be. We need change. People have a respect a government that gets the basics right. In a world of 24-hour supermarkets and instant access everything, it ought to be possible to make an appointment to see a GP. Yet in my Essex constituency, older folk are literally left standing in line and waiting on pavements. They have to compete to be seen by a doctor. People have a right to expect a government that controls who crosses our borders. Tens of thousands of Londoners log in and log out of the London Underground system every day. Yet the government has just wasted another £224 million on a system that failed to log people in and out when they cross our borders.
We'll offer you a full summary of what Douglas Carswell has to say today, but the headline there is that he is defecting the Conservative MP to UKIP for reasons which he's explaining now. We'd like to give him a fuller explanation, but I'm afraid our satellite signal's not holding up, so we'll bring you a summary of what he's had to say and bring you that later on.
Able to decide who comes. Promised us a great freedom bill, which was going to repeal lots of unnecessary red tape. It never seemed to happen. Ministers promised us real bank reform. They only tinkered so things could stay the same. They don't think things through. They make one glib announcement after another. Then they move on to the next speech, the next headline, the next announcement. They promised to cut public debt. In just 5 years of this government, public debt will have increased by more than it did under 13 years of Gordon Brown. Clever wordplay about debt and deficit can't possibly hide the fact that the government is still having to borrow £100 billion a year. And even then, they're not getting the basics right. We need change. People have a right to expect a government that is answerable to Parliament and a Parliament that is meaningfully accountable to the people. All three parties went into the last election promising to give local people a right to recall their MP. The coalition agreement promised a system of open primaries to throw politics open to those beyond SW1. Of course, none of it's happened. The Whip spent the summer trying to undermine Zac Goldsmith's excellent proposals for recall. They're not serious about real change. It's above all this failure to deliver on the promise of meaningful political reform that has driven me to this podium here today. We need change in our relationship with Europe. When we joined what was to become the European Union all those years ago, we imagined we would be joining a prosperous trading bloc. It accounted for some 40%, 36% of world output. Today it accounts for less than 25%. In a decade, it's expected to account for less than 15%. Europe's the one continent on the planet that's not growing. Even a decade ago, we were told that we had to join the euro because it would bring prosperity. Looking across the channel, no one seriously argues that anymore. Yet who in Westminster, who amongst our so-called leaders, is prepared to envisage real change? To be fair, over the past 4 years, ministers have, on occasions, done the right thing about Europe. They vetoed a treaty change, they refused a budget increase, and of course they eventually agreed to an in-out referendum. But on each occasion, they only did the right thing because they were forced to by their own side. On each occasion, they instructed their own MPs on a 3-line whip to do the wrong thing. No one cheered David Cameron's Bloomberg speech more loudly than me when he promised to negotiate a fundamentally different relationship with the EU, when he promised to put it to the people in 2017, in or out. But there's been no detail since. That's because there isn't any. They're not serious about it. They haven't thought it through. The Prime Minister specifically ruled out associate trade-only relationship with Europe at a meeting this June to the 1922 committee. His advisers have made it clear that they won't contemplate a deal with UKIP. They're more comfortable doing deals with Nick Clegg than with a party that wants real change in our relations with the EU. His advisers have made it clear that they're looking to cut a deal that gives them just enough to persuade enough voters to vote to stay in. That's the game plan. It's not about giving real change in our national interest. It's about not changing things. It's about hanging on to office. Once I realised that, my position in the Conservative Party became untenable. There is a world of change and opportunity out there. Tens of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty in recent decades. There's a growing middle class in India, in China, and elsewhere. Our future prosperity rests on being able to produce things that those new consumers want. Ministers are simply not up to giving us the kind of realignment that we need. It's not enough that I leave the Conservative Party and join UKIP. As someone who's always answered directly to the independent-minded people of Essex, there's only one honourable thing for me to do. I must seek permission from my boss, the people of Clacton. I will now resign from Parliament and stand for UKIP in the by-election that must now follow. I don't have to do this. It would have been easy for me to muddle along comfortably as a backbench MP. There are all too many who enjoy that convenient lifestyle. That's not the sort of person that I am. I stood for Parliament in the first place because I believe in certain things. I still do, with greater determination than ever. I just happen to know that principle in politics is more important than the career of an individual MP, even when that MP happens to be me. Things don't have to be this way. I'll be asking voters in Essex to help me to change them. Let's do this together. Let's see if we can make history. Thank you. I must now return to Clacton for what is to come.
Well, there is the Conservative MP for Clacton, Douglas Carswell, announcing that not only is he to join the UKIP party, the UK Independence Party, that he is also going to force a by-election and stand for UKIP in that by-election in his constituency of Clacton in Essex, saying that his position in the Conservative Party is untenable and, quote, we need change in our relationship with Europe.